All right, let's look at how we should set up replication. Just a preview video here. The first thing to know is that the distribution database is an OLTP database when we set up replication. And what I mean by that is it's going to be reading from the transaction log and transactional replication, and it's going to be distributing commands. And there's going to be a lot of different processes that go on. You'll notice that in the cleanup job, it updates statistics on both the commands and the transactions table. And it's very important because if it doesn't do that, you could have very poor performance. And depending on how often you run that, it could literally be updating statistics every 5 to 10 minutes. Right? So you see the yellow arrow is pointed to the distribution server in this example. We have 3 publishers and 3 subscribers. However, in many environments, what I've seen is put P1 as the publisher and the distributor and the subscriber for all of the others, and then it distributes everything, right? So imagine if everything is running on P1, and that's what I see in a lot of setups. And eventually that's going to break and fall apart, and that's just the way it's going to work because it's not designed that way. Now, I understand people are like, well, if we have a publisher and a distributor and a subscriber, that's very expensive. It's one of the reasons why I say, hey, definitely contact me because we can look at Azure as an alternative to a subscriber. There are definitely some good alternatives. Some of the cloud solutions allow for this, and maybe even using a cloud solution for like a distribution server would be a lot cheaper than having its own distribution server. But the key here to remember is that on the distribution server itself, there are going to be these agent jobs that are running. And so those are going to add load to the server. They're going to be competing over CPU, memory, resources, just like on the publisher server, SQL Server is going to be using as much memory as it possibly can, and it's going to be using the CPU that it needs. So if you put everything on one server and then you try to replicate it downstream, you might be able to get away with that at first, but there's going to come a point that you're going to break things. Or what's worse, which I've seen, is a distribution database finally has enough because there's too much pressure on it, and it basically goes into suspect mode, and then you're out for a day. So that leads me to my next point. Let's suppose that we have 3 publishers. This is another common one, and we have one distribution database, and I see this a lot. They will have all of the publishers go through the distribution database to the 3 subscribers, right? So imagine if P1, P2, P3 are going through the distribution database on a distribution server to the 3 subscribers. Okay, now wait a minute. If we have 3 publishers, then each publisher needs its own distribution database. And this allows us for scaling as well as certain what I call administrative management. As a case in point, I may not with every publisher, great example is the Hang Seng, I will not be running my update statistics as a case in point with the Hang Seng the same way that I would with cryptos. For instance, when does the crypto markets close, like Bitcoin? Never. When does the Hang Seng close? In fact, the Hang Seng is only open maximum of 5 business days a week, right? I mean, we have downtime with the Hang Seng. It's a totally different ballgame. We have a load schedule. We do not have a load schedule through the crypto markets. It just doesn't work that way. So that's my point. Like, the solution that I'm going to build for the Hang Seng is going to be very different than the solution I'm going to build for the crypto markets, okay? So like statistics, indexing, log management, loading techniques, all of these must be thought out in advance. And if you put them all onto the same distribution database, then you can't optimize it as well as if each of those publishers uses their own distribution database. In big environments, in larger environments, which is generally where replication is used for a high availability solution, in those big environments, you definitely want to be thinking about scale from the beginning because you're going to get bigger and bigger data sets. So these are just some things to think about when you set up replication. The ideal setup is going to be different publishers, a distributor, and separate subscribers, of course, or even if it was just one publisher, one distributor, and one subscriber. But the more the data start to scale out on the publisher side, you're going to want the data to scale out on the subscriber side, as well as consider the fact that your distribution server should have a distribution database for each of those publishers.